You know that feeling when your to-do list looks longer than the line for biryani at a family gathering? The work is piling up. You know you should get up and start, but you're glued to the couch, scrolling through Instagram like it's your full-time job. Or worse, you're still lying in bed, wondering if your pillow has cast some kind of magical spell on you. Are you lazy? No. You're experiencing something psychologists call the freeze response. Now, I get it. You're probably thinking, freeze? I live in a country where the sun is basically a permanent resident. But the freeze I'm talking about has nothing to do with temperature. It's your brain's way of reacting to stress. Your mind sees your endless to-do list, your overdue bills, or that text from your mom asking why you haven't called her in 3 days, and it goes into full-on fight-or-flight mode. Except, you're not fighting or fleeing. You're just freezing. But here's the kicker. Your brain can't tell the difference between an actual life-threatening situation, like a wild tiger chasing you, and the metaphorical tigers of life, like those unread work emails, or for sisters, unwashed piles of dishes after the guests depart. So it sends you into freeze mode. But fear not, because Allah promises us. And whoever fears Allah, He will make for him a way out and will provide for him from where he does not expect. Yes, Allah has a way out for you. Even when life feels overwhelming, there's always an exit door, spiritually and mentally. But first, we need to press the unpause button on this freeze response. So let's talk solutions. Tip number 1, start small. No, even smaller. You might be tempted to go all in and try to tackle the whole dunya at once. Resist that temptation. Instead, start with something so small it almost feels silly, like sitting up. Seriously, if you're lying in bed, just sit up. That's the first victory. You don't necessarily have to aim for completing that project that you always wanted to. Perhaps start watching videos about it. We're talking baby steps. And guess what? When you do sit up, celebrate. You're probably thinking, why would I celebrate sitting up? Isn't that ridiculous? Not at all. Take the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. When he first received revelation in the cave of Hira, he didn't immediately begin preaching Islam to the masses. Instead, he started small, by quietly conveying the message to his close family and friends, building a foundation step by step. Over time, these small actions led to the growth of a global faith. Tip number 2, celebrate the small wins. Now that you've sat up, what's next? Do something else small. Maybe it's standing up, making your bed, or sending that one text you've been avoiding. And then, celebrate that too. You might not have conquered the world yet, but you've conquered the couch. That's something. The Prophet, peace be unto him, said, "The strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah than the weak believer, while there is good in both." And by strong, we don't mean only physically strong. We mean strong in resolve, strong in patience, and strong in your ability to push through the freeze, even if it's just one tiny step at a time. Now let's talk a bit about the brain's reward system. Dopamine. When you do something, even as small as sitting up or sending a single message, your brain rewards you with a little hit of dopamine, a natural feel-good chemical. It's like your brain is saying, "Good job. You did something, and now I'm going to make you feel just a little better about it." This is important because once your brain gets a taste of progress, no matter how small, it starts to shift its focus. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the mountain of tasks ahead, your mind begins to say, "Hey, this isn't so bad. I can do this." Remember, the small steps you take release these little bursts of dopamine, which can gradually push you toward bigger accomplishments. Think of it like a spiritual snowball effect. Each tiny action builds momentum, carrying you further than you initially thought possible. It's similar to how we're encouraged to consistently engage in good deeds, no matter how small. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "The most beloved of deeds to Allah are those that are consistent, even if they are small." So when you stand up, answer that one email, or pray even when you're feeling overwhelmed, your brain is not just responding physically, it's responding spiritually too. Every small victory is a step toward breaking that freeze, and your brain is wired to help you along the way. Tip number 3, use humor to lighten the load. The point is, sometimes we make things more complicated than they are. What you see as a huge mountain is really just a series of small hills. Take one hill at a time, and before you know it, you're halfway to the top. Humor is a great way to break the tension and remind yourself that life doesn't always have to be so serious. Did you know the Prophet, peace be upon him, had a sense of humor? His gentleness is also referred to in the Holy Quran. It was by a mercy from God that you, O Messenger, were lenient with them. Had you been harsh and hard-hearted, they would surely have scattered away from about you. In another narration by Jabir, the Prophet, peace be upon him, was pretending to be a camel, and his grandsons were riding on his back. He was walking on his hands and feet and made a compliment to them. How wonderful is your camel, and how wonderful riders you are. In conclusion, small steps lead to big changes. So how do we overcome the freeze? Start small. Sit up, take one step, and stack those small victories like building blocks. Remember, Allah doesn't burden a soul beyond that it can bear. If you feel frozen, it's okay. You've got this. You were built to handle it. The Prophet, peace be upon him, reminded us, the deeds most loved by Allah are those done regularly, even if they are small. So take that small step. Be consistent, and don't forget to give yourself grace. Each little victory is a step towards a better you. Thank you very much for your attention. If I helped you, consider subscribing and liking this video, and see you in the next one. And always remember, Allah is closer to you than your jugular vein. You are never truly alone.